It's a busy Sunday afternoon here in Philadelphia sports with the Birds, Sixers, and Flyers all in action today. And we have to get underway as the Sixers try to get win number one on the season. Will they get it done against the Indiana Pacers in Indianapolis? Welcome to the PHLY Sixers pregame show presented by Coors Light. Alongside Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, I'm Devon Givens. Brianna with you. All of you, come on in. Welcome, join in and talk some hoops as we get ready for this basketball. Yes, bring it so we can talk some hoops. Again, will the Philadelphia 76ers pick up their first victory of the season? We have a lot to talk about. A very disappointing loss to the Toronto Raptors on Friday night. The guys covered that on Friday. A lot that was said in that particular post-game show, but we do have to begin with some conversation about the man who is running the show here, and that is Tyrese Maxey, and how to get him going. Because while he did cross 20 points once again in the loss against the Toronto Raptors, he once again had to take a ton of shots to get to that number of that 24 points that he had on 23 shots. He shot 6 for 23, 2 for 12 from 3. And while he did get to the free throw line 12 times, he made 10 free throws. But the fact that he added those 10 free throws to his point total overall
starters are in
allowed him to get to that 24 points. So the struggling continues from the field as he is the number one option, and the defense is really keying in on how to slow him down. Derek, as you kind of settle down a little bit from Friday night's loss and seeing where things are after the first two games, how can you get him going? It's time for Maxey to get going, especially this afternoon against the Indiana Pacers, who they've had trouble with.
Yeah, he's not just the number one option. He's the number one option, the number two option, and the number three option. And the second option, or the what would be the second option, just cannot pass. Like, has no passing vision, no passing creativity, no passing willingness. So it's really...
We are talking about Kelly.
Yeah,
right?
I'm talking about Kelly.
I just wanted to make sure we were... I'm down on Tyrese's playmaking, but I'm not that down.
That's the second option, I think. So I think it's just there's so much burden on him, and I think he's pressing. I think he's probably a little tired. I think certainly defenses are throwing a lot at him. They tried to let him run off ball a little bit with Lowry, and we'll get to that in a second with the starting lineup. But it's just like, I'm not sure if there's all that much you can do when nobody else on the floor is really a threat to create either for themselves or for anyone else. I do think... I share some of the concerns that Kyle expressed regarding the thumb. We don't certainly know. There's been no indication that it's bothering him, but he has been coming up short on everything. Yeah. But really, I think these are all just temporary issues that hopefully you have to get through another game or two without your stars, and then things will fall back into place. But we've seen, look, we can go back to what Tyrese Maxey did last year without Embiid and with Kelly as sort of his number two option. And if you actually look at Maxey's stats during that period, he put up pretty good points on decent efficiency. It's the team success that was really down. Mm-hmm. Well, this is nowhere near that. Like, he's shooting, of high usage players, he probably has the worst efficiency in the league right now. I do think a lot of it is just like he is in a really bad funk from the perimeter, and he's tried to overcorrect a little bit in trying to get to the rim, and nothing is working.
Yeah, I think he said it after game one. I think the more that I've gone back over the film that this shows up, right, that he's trying to play too fast. And I think you see that everywhere. Sometimes it's driving into traffic, getting sledgehammered by Brook Lopez, Jakob Poeltl, whoever might be at the rim. Some of it is when he gets past that first level of defenders. If you want to use the mid-range, and I think you probably should use the mid-range based on how teams are defending him, you got to get into that and like be confident in that, rather than the mid-range jumpers that he's doing right now or taking right now are the only way where he's not playing fast, where he's playing really slow, methodical, and he's taking these fadeaway jumpers over guys in many cases who are like 6'6", 6'7", and they're getting good contests off. So he's forcing a lot of early clock threes, and I'm fine with that, right? I think we believe enough in his shooting talent that will come, but it just does seem like he's rushing through a lot of his reads, a lot of his offensive process. Like, the thing I keep bringing up is that needing to take one more step, right? Like, to get closer to the rim, to see that skip pass to the corner, to the opposite corner for a three-point shooter. Just a lot of things where if he just takes one more second, one more step, whatever it might be, I think the world will start opening up for him. And the Sixers have clearly identified, or Nick Nurse, I should say, has clearly identified that he needs some help, carrying the ball handling load. Because for the second straight game, Kyle Lowry is going to start. So that alone says to me, if you take Nick Nurse at his word coming into the year that, Lowry they were going to try to have him in a smaller role, for him to already be like, okay, he's playing 30 minutes in the second game and starting in 2 of your first 3 games. That says a lot about how much Tyrese is struggling and how much he feels they need to just get somebody out on the floor with him who can dribble the basketball and get them into sets. So it's not just Tyrese run the show every single possession.
So adding to the one more step and just being a little more patient, 1 more second, 2 more seconds, 1 more dribble for him. And the encouraging part was him getting to the free throw line finally, getting the whistle that he so wants badly from the officiating. So getting to the foul line those 12 times and making those 10. It was the 6 for 23 that's problematic, because again, it's that 1 more step, it's that 1 more dribble, it's that 2 more seconds to allow yourself some wiggle room to get that extra shot off, because you are going against Kyle, as you mentioned, those long arm defenders, and while you're fading away, creating space, they're still going with you with that wingspan, that length, to try to disrupt any view from you getting the shot off the way you want to. And while he has made it over the course of his career, again, as Derek pointed out, he's the 1 and the 2 option. So it's not just a 1 arm. It's probably 2 or 3 more arms, because your initial defender has 1, the other one's coming in with 2, trying to, again, disrupt your flow overall of getting that shot off. So for him to continue to mature and become the player that we all felt that he was going to be in year number 5, and not saying it's a little unfair because Embiid and George are not there, but no, it is fair, because we put these things on him because of how good he has shown himself to be, because of how they look at him, how they scout him, how they defend him. He has put us in a position to look at him and grade him this way, to elevate his level of play because of how good he is. So in these moments, which we've seen him succeed in the past, last season, we expect the same thing this time around, even with the much better roster that's surrounding him right now. So he pointed out how he needed to slow down and get things under control after game 1. He needs to do it again in this one. And this is a more high-paced run type team that showed the Sixers some trouble last year, and he has to be better with it. So with it, is he going to be better with that today, this afternoon, against this Indiana team that's also coming off a loss on Friday, now at 1-1?
They did not play well.
They did not play well at all.
New York, you give them credit, but obviously Indiana's going to be looking to bounce back.
Absolutely.
I don't give New York credit, ever.
Neither do I.
I don't know, man. Those New York slices are generally pretty good. I'll give them some credit on that one.
The family room is pretty good too. The food. But no. And the other thing too, Kyle, that I will add is that with the mid-range game, man, that is considered, you need to have patience there, because for him to go 100 miles per hour and stop at 95, to pull that basketball back one time, to be on balance, square his shoulders, and get that shot off anywhere in that mid-range, whether it's on the wing, in that free throw line extended, but it's on the wing, and being able to knock that down from 15 to 17 while your defender is now sliding back because you took him off balance. Well, he has to be able to, again, give himself that extra second or 2 to allow that to happen, because you trust what you do. You trust your work. You trust your move to pull that defender off you and get that shot off. So Tyrese Maxey is, again, one that we're going to be looking at here and wondering overall of what happens.
I see there was a touchdown in the Eagles game and heard it from behind the glass across the studio.
And great catch, too. Great concentration there by Devontae Smith. But that's where the concentration has to come in for Tyrese Maxey this afternoon, because they're going to be key in it. And look, this defense is much better than, even if you want to put on the job that we gave Gary Harris. I mean, not Gary Harris, pardon me.
Gary Trent.
We gave Gary Trent credit for his defense individually, but we're also going to give credit to these guys today defensively because of what Nembhard and I'm getting my other guy's name, number 23, Neesmith. Yeah. Those 2 guys in their defense on him when they switch off, and even TJ McConnell when he does come in the game, they're going to give him trouble. They're going to give him fits, and he has to find a way to be under control, be comfortable, and score the basketball.
Now, I like how I got Neesmith's number, but if you ask me on Jeopardy, Shake Milton's number, I freaking blank.
What I would say is broadly, Indiana is not a good defensive team, and a lot of it is by design, right?
Yeah.
Like they want to play super fast all the time, and there are going to be downstream effects from that. So if you're looking at a team that Tyrese can just see a few baskets go in against and start to build some positive momentum,
Right.
this is definitely that team. They have, some good individual defenders, but I don't think this is like, I don't walk into an Indiana Pacers game with the way that they're set up and play and think like, oh man, Maxey's in for a tough day today. But I also didn't think that against
Right, I was gonna
Toronto.
say,
And Toronto, he was 6 for 23 from the field. So
I'm not assuming anything when they just played Toronto without Barrett and Quickly and got smoked. So I will take nothing for granted here.
Yeah.
And certainly when we talk about Maxey, slowing down, there's two sort of distinct conversations. There's getting out in transition, maybe even attacking an early offense. That can be quick, but when things do, then, when the Pacers settle down, then you got to be a little more methodical, get to your spots, see what they're giving, not just, rush towards the rim or rush a shot. Because it is like he took 12 threes and he took 8 threes per game last year with Joel Embiid. If he's taking more threes with less space and more attention, it's just going to be a much higher degree of difficulty. And again, when he's on, he can make that work. But when he's not on and he's clearly coming up short on everything, he's got to pivot a little bit. And pivot doesn't always mean driving directly in to Brook Lopez or Jacob Poeltl. So I think, it's tough for him. Like, I do think we can sit here and dissect his end of the season and last year without Joe and then start of the season now. There are maybe 10 players in the world who would actually have good team offense with this collection of misfit parts. He's not one of those 10 players. I am still very excited for what he will look like when more talent is around him. But right now, you've just got to scratch a couple wins out here and there because you don't want to start the season off 0-3, 0-4 that you have such big hopes for. And the seeding, Kyle's been on this a lot over the preseason. Seeding is going to matter. And you don't want to get in a position where in January and February and March, you're trying to make decisions with Joel Embiid that you don't want to make because you're trying to salvage a top 4 seed, trying to salvage a top 5, top 6 even seed like you were last year. So it would be great just to pick up some of these winnable games that they have been struggling so far.
Yeah. And with Maxey, I want everyone to understand, right? Like, I don't, and none of us expect Tyrese to win games by himself, right? Like, it's not a reasonable thing to ask anybody to win games by themselves. It's also not reasonable to be like, okay, Tyrese Maxey's efficiency with Joel Embiid or with a full strength team, it needs to be the same when Joel's gone, right? Like that's not going to happen.
Mm-mm.
But he's playing below the standard that he needs to meet, right? Which is relatively good efficiency, relatively high level playmaking, even just like competent playmaking would help. And frankly, on the defensive end, there needs to be more off-ball awareness, off-ball engagement than we've seen from him in the early days. I thought he was horrible on that front in the Toronto game. Now, I actually think their defense, he said this after the game on Friday night, and I tend to agree with him. I think their defense has probably been better than it might look when you're looking at, the other team's efficiency. Or they caused 27 turnovers in that game on Friday night. And some of that is just Toronto being a young and banged up team. But if you want to play aggressive and create extra possessions, well, they're living up to that and they're effective in that way so far. So I think if you just get like a what we think should be the baseline Tyrese Maxey game, you should have no problem beating a team like Toronto. Indiana's a different beast altogether, but it's certainly not a completely unwinnable game today.
No, not at all. And you mentioned the 27 turnovers that they caused. They scored 28 points off of those. Still, even today, 2 days
That's not
later.
enough, though. Like, when you get that many opportunities, you got to come away with more points.
You should. And that's my point. You have 28, you score 20. If you 27, you score 28. You need to win that game. When you force 27 turnovers against a bad basketball team, you need to win that.
They also gave
game.
some of those possessions away with the rebounding, though.
Very true.
They were awful on the glass.
Very true. 54-28. The difference there in favor
that
of
is such
Toronto.
an insane,
crazy number.
insane margin.
Yeah. Yes.
It's also insane because the Raptors didn't miss that many shots. I legitimately grabbed over half of their available offensive rebounding opportunities. You can't do that. You just can't win games doing that.
They only made 6 more shots than the Sixers, so they missed enough.
Yeah.
They missed enough. All right, let's get to the team defense that you talked about it quickly because the Sixers right now are giving up 119.5 points in the first 2 games against a team, again, that can score. And while Tyrese Haliburton hasn't really gotten things going all that much, we do know they like to pick up the pace, and they gave the Sixers trouble a season ago, even with Embiid in the lineup. And now you have a different type of center in Andre Drummond there in the middle. Kyle, when you look at their team defense, and you mentioned Tyrese Maxey saying he feels like they've played a little bit better, the team defense, though, is giving up a lot of points. So trying to get a win, you need to slow some teams down.
Well, yeah, and I think the big thing, and Derek and I hammered this on Friday night, is I just don't know how sustainable their style of defense is that they're playing if you don't have Joel Embiid and you don't have your full complement of wings, right? Because it's one thing to go to Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, and the rest of these guys and say, hey, we want you to play pretty aggressively. We want you gambling and try to get steals. And it worked out in terms of the amount of turnovers they created. But when the side effect of that is that you're getting back cut constantly, when the side effect of that is you can end up out of position for these rebounding opportunities, when the side effect of that is that you are funneling guys toward Yabusele, a 6'8" guy who's masquerading as a center. Derek, please stop screwing around with your phone in the Eagles game in the middle of our. Yes, you are. Pay attention.
I'm paying attention.
Okay, you're paying attention to the Eagles game. When the product of all that is that people who shouldn't be asked to consistently protect the rim or consistently rebound or do whatever it might be, that's just, you're not going to have a good defense. Right now, I think they're sitting like 24th in defense after a couple of games.
27th on a per possession.
They're 24th in defensive rating.
And they're 23rd in giving up those points at 119.
So they're right in the same, whether it's by a per possession or whether it's raw points per game. That's not a good place for them to be. And frankly, if Maxey is like the moon and the stars on offense, if he's your only path to offense, you are going to have to win through defense in some way. So they have to modify the defense a little bit. Some of that also will probably be playing less of guys like Eric Gordon, who he was a complete train wreck on defense.
Showing his age a little bit. Yeah. Showing his age a little bit, especially when he has to give so many minutes on that body. Let's get to some of the key matchups here in this one, because we've seen this before. It starts with Maxey, we know, but where are some of the other matchups that you like to focus on in this one, and what you want to see?
Well, you've got to be able to hunt Haliburton, and whoever ends up being guarded by him, like, you've got to be able to get the switches to be able to hunt him, because he was a real bad half-court defender.
He was really bad on Friday night.
Really disinterested, and you've got to be able to get Tyrese onto him. Get the Tyrese versus Tyrese show. Get Maxey going. I think that is probably where you start. It's a little tougher because Turner is a pretty good defender, and if you're going to put him in a lot of pick and rolls, like, he will be able to cover up some of that, but you've got to hunt Haliburton. You just got to.
Yeah.
Speaking of Turner, I think one of the other big things is how does that impact Drummond? Like we saw in game one against Brook Lopez, who different players, but similar in that they're going to take a good amount of threes and they're going to drag your center out. So with Drummond being brought out to the perimeter, that puts a lot of pressure on Maxey, on Lowry, on Oubre, Martin, go on down the list, all their perimeter guys to guard their man. Otherwise, it becomes a layup line, because frankly, Drummond does not have the speed and space to recover back to the rim, to protect the rim.
Yep.
And then if there's a kick out, if he does get collapsed back to the rim, he's probably not getting out to Miles Turner before Miles Turner can get up a three. So that's one of we're going to be saying this over and over again all year. The problem right now is that it's in a 30-minute role rather than, can Andre Drummond do that for 10, 15 minutes? I think so. Can he do that for 30 plus or mid 30s if he's able to stay out there? That's a bigger question. The other part of that is, can Andre Drummond stop fouling all the time? Because we're now 2 games in, he's in foul trouble both of those games. And that has forced Yabusele and even Adem Bona on Friday night to play more minutes than you're probably hoping for them to play at the 5. He's got to hold up his end of the bargain defensively. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of trouble getting stops.
Yeah, and it wasn't only just the foul trouble. It wasn't just trying to defend the perimeter. It was also getting back to protect the rim. And I thought he really, really struggled against that with Pirtle at times. And they just need more from Drummond for sure.
I was going to go with bench to bench, because to give up the amount of points that they did. And now, we look at their bench, the Toronto Raptors, and you say, all right, Chris Boucher, I can see him going off and getting his. But when you have other guys that just simply had career games. And Sheed, again, rookie, the guy from Houston, nice player. Should he be having 11 points and 11 shots to help lead that bench unit? 12 from Jamison Battle and 12 also from Jonathan Magbo. You cannot have 51-19 as the discrepancy.
Do you think
there.
if you put that group of gentlemen in front of
No chance.
average Sixers fan, they could pick those guys
Zero.
out? Or like name any of them?
No.
Frankly, I couldn't.
And
I was going to say, if you put him in front of Philadelphia media, I don't think most of us would have gotten
And
it.
she'd even had a nice college career.
Yes.
And I don't think people would have known who he was. But again, 51-19, the discrepancy in points for them. And we know, speaking about the Indiana Pacers, that their bench is much better. And you have Ben Mathurin back, who had a decent night on Friday. You have TJ McConnell, who we know who he is, and you Isaiah Jackson, and so on and so forth, and just continue to go down the line, Ben Shepherd, of what they do for that Indiana Pacers group. You need to slow that bench unit down. So my key matchup is what do the two benches look like? And for the struggles of the Sixers bench, and you mentioned the starters, is Caleb Martin still coming off the bench?
No, he's
Okay, so
starting
he's
along
starting
with Kelly Oubre on the wing.
All right, so Eric Gordon is now coming off the bench, right? So can he help with Yabusele and some of those others as we look at the starting lineup there? Will he be able to help Eric Gordon? Point production-wise, can he contribute some points there off the bench and helping kind of balance that thing out and match the production a little bit? So when we talk about the team defense, you're going to need some of that offense too to offset from the starters maybe not scoring enough for what the bench unit is going to be able to give you, from whether it's McCain maybe getting a few sprinkle minutes here.
I'm glad you brought him up. I would rather see him play than Eric Gordon, just straight
right.
up. The other night,
Right.
Eric Gordon was not only ineffective on offense, but completely disinterested on defense. I do not think it's a good precedent to set early in a season that like you're going to completely mail it in on a team that, we talked all offseason. They have a lot of guys who we think can play.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to try to create a culture of competition and like next man up and your spot is not guaranteed, you cannot look at how Eric Gordon played in that game on Friday, see Jared McCain as like a, sort of comparable role that he's fighting for, and be like, you know what, Eric, just go right on back out there and take those same minutes. To me, Eric Gordon should not play today. You give Jared McCain a chance in the first half. You see how it goes. That it was that bad, and I don't think there's much downside compared to what we saw out of Gordon and playing McCain. Like it'll basically look the same if he fails. So I'd rather fail with the young guy and see what he's got early on. The other thing is like expectations are pretty low for this game, and without Joel Embiid and Paul George right now. So you might as well throw him in the mix and see what he's got.
I really want to see TJ McConnell and Jared McCain. See, TJ, he's going to try to dog him up and down the floor and give him trouble. And of course, who's out there with him, who's going to be on the field with him to kind of, again, offset the ball handling duties. Going to be very interesting. But
over-under on stolen inbounds passes set at 1.5. You can all make your wagers right now.
There you go. A little TJ.
Will that make Devon's best bet? Gambling Gibbons' corner over here.
But look, let's start real fast before we get to those. The starting lineup. It's again
same as last game.
Same as last game with Lowry and Maxey in the backcourt, Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond filling out the front court. What do you think? Are you good with that starting lineup, especially seeing Eric Gordon?
No, but yes, it's like one of those.
For where we are, yes.
Again, I hate to be this guy I'm going to do it all season. There are too many little guys on this team. Like playing Kyle Lowry and Tyrese Maxey together, being your solution to not having enough creation is not a good place to be, right? And some of that is just the difficulty of Tyrese. I hate the conversation that's like, well, he's just not a point guard. I think it's a little more complicated than that, right? I think he has playmaking limitations that you can get creativity from the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, whatever it might be, but you do have to have some high-level playmakers around him. Lowry being your only way to do that, and that includes with because Joel is not one, Paul George is not one. They help you a lot in many other ways, but they do not have playmaking on this team. That remains a big sore spot for me. So I understand why Nurse is doing this. I think they're going to continue to do this when Joel and Paul are not available, just because it is Lowry and Nurse. They have that long-standing trust and connection.
Right.
And I just am worried that they will keep running into the same walls, right? Like the other part of this is once Gordon moves to the bench and then you have to get Maxey rest, well, now you have those Lowry Gordon minutes that Nick Nurse openly and transparently said, I don't want to play them together, right? So every action that they do, every change they make right now, there is some sort of negative consequence. My hope is that we can see them lean maybe more on somebody like Ricky off of the bench, because they got to just get bigger and more athletic is kind of my takeaway after the first 2 games. If I see them play Jared McCain, Reggie Jackson, and Kyle Lowry together again today, I'm not sure I will show up for the post-game show. I might have to load manage our 3rd game of the year. Put it that way.
Understood. Yeah, understood. So that's your starting lineup for tonight. This afternoon, Sixers and Pacers from
It's always
Indianapolis.
tonight. I don't care if it's in the afternoon.
Hey,
once you're in the arena, you're under the lights, so it's nighttime.
I was so bad about that. Whenever I would tweet, I would say tonight, and people would like try
Everyone
to
gets
dunk on
really
me.
mad
It's like,
about it.
what do you want from me? Like this is the pattern I follow for 95% of the games. It's not my fault. They're making us watch a game at 3:30.
I always try to be on point with that. Afternoon, night.
No, I'm horrible.
Yeah. So
It'll happen at one point tonight.
If we are in a dark arena that's lit up, it's nighttime. I don't care what time it is.
Also, it's cold in there all the time, so that's
all
not
the
helping.
time. That is a fact. It's always cold in there. All right, let's get to this pregame pick segment brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Let's get to our picks here on the show. Derek and Kyle, they go in cold. They have no idea.
We're hitting Tyrese Maxey under
29.5 points I put there for Tyrese Maxey, simply because the efficiency hasn't been there. The defense has been geared to slow him down, and he just hasn't been good enough to hit that number as of yet. So do I.
Because here's the thing. He's going to shoot 25 times. So if he's under 29 points, it means he's having his 3rd off day in a row, and that post game is going to be tough.
Not thrilled.
I'm going nuclear on that post game.
Not thrilled, but I did throw it in there. We're being honest with the people, so we had to throw it in there. And I also did, though, throw in a double-double for Andre Drummond, whether it's he was 11-9 against the Toronto Raptors. How do you not get a double-double against that team? That being, well, I saw the rebounding deficiency, so there's that.
And the foul trouble.
And the foul trouble in it all.
A lot of problems.
I expect him to be a little better today where he does, and the amount of shots that Indiana does put up, I'd imagine there'll be some opportunity for him.
A lot of possessions for both teams.
To get that double-double. So right now, that is at a plus 220. If you like that one, go ahead, run it if you like. Except for you might want to change the Tyrese Maxey part just simply because that was the high of the number of 29.5. Maybe you want to adjust it and say he does get over 24.5, 25.5, and you're in the plus there and hope for a better Tyrese Maxey game in that regard. The individual bets for this one, some TJ McConnell love. You went with the inbound steals. I went with over 4.5 assists for TJ McConnell in this game.
That's a juicy number.
It was
there.
at plus 575. I was like, how do you not like those odds at plus 575 to go ahead and take that number?
The play time will be the big thing, but normally TJ is pretty fired up to play against these guys. So anything that plays into the fact that TJ is going to come in revved up to play the Sixers, I like that generally.
Yeah, so that's the TJ McConnell one. And the final individual bet of the afternoon, Tyrese Maxey still can't get over those 3 threes. So under 3.
I hope you're wrong.
Threes.
I don't want to do another Tyrese Maxey's stinking it up post-game show.
No, I don't want it either. But each one I've gone over with his 3 threes and thinking that he's going to hit that number. And unfortunately, he has not. So those are our 2 individual bets plus the parlay that we have there together. If you like any of those, go ahead and play it. That's at Bet365. Again, this pregame pick segment was brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Quick predictions. Derek, how you feeling about the first win of the season potentially?
Why do you got to do this to me?
Because
I'll be the bad guy. I expect pain and suffering.
Pain and suffering.
Sixers lose 0-3. and nobody cares because the Eagles won today.
Maxey goes for 40. They pick up their first win. You guys are all cowards. I need something good to talk about.
I'm just being honest.
Nope. Unfortunately, I think they take another L this afternoon. We'll talk about it. We'll be here with you after the game. Thanks to our presenting sponsor for this pregame show, Coors Light. Hopefully, we're choosing chill in a good way after the game. For Bree, Derek,
we're
Kyle,
need to choose
I'm
chill.
Devon. We'll be back. We'll see you all after the game. Hopefully, we're talking about a Sixers victory. We'll see you then.
We all silly like the mayor.